I'm Metin Alisho. I'm a data scientist here at FireMind. Today I'm going to be walking you through Amazon SageMaker Studio Data Wrangler. So what is Data Wrangler? Data Wrangler is a tool that allows you to clean, transform and prepare your data for machine learning. So why do we want to use it? Data scientists spend on average 80% of their time just cleaning and processing data, and only 20% of their time actually drawing useful insights and patterns. With Data Wrangler, we can flip those numbers around. To get started, head over to Amazon SageMaker from your AWS Management Console. When you get to Amazon SageMaker, you want to select the button that gives you the option to go to Studio. From here, we can add a user. Let's give this user some meaningful name. Call it FireMind user. And now we want to assign a new role to this user. We can create a new role, and here we can grant access for the user to any S3 bucket. You can restrict a specific bucket, but for the purpose of this tutorial, let's grant access to any S3. Once you've granted access to the S3 bucket, let's hit submit. Once a user has been created, we just hit Open Studio. If you're opening Amazon Studio for the first time, it can take around 5 minutes. And it is worth noting at this point, you do need to access a large instance type to be able to run any work on Amazon Studio. Once we have loaded our Amazon SageMaker Studio, we want to select a new data flow. Again, this can take a couple of minutes to load. Once Data Wrangler has finished loading, we're going to be prompted with a .flow file. This .flow file is where we're going to carry out all of our Data Wrangler work. We're going to be working with the credit risk data, so let's rename our flow file credit risk. As our data is held in an Amazon S3 bucket, we're going to click S3. We're going to select our bucket and then select our data. Worth noting at this point that on the right we have a button called Advanced Configuration. If we select that, we have an option called Enable Sampling. Enable Sampling is useful if we're dealing with really large data sets and we just want to take a small subset of that data. As we have a fairly decent sized data set, we're going to untick this and then select Import. Once we have imported our data, we arrive at our data flow. The data flow shows the whole process from start to finish of our data preparation pipeline. It shows us what we have and what we want when we want to process the data for our ML model. In our data flow, you'll notice we have data types. Data types is just a default step that is created in our data flow. A step is just the individual engineering steps in our pipeline. This is similar to creating a new data frame in a pandas library. If we select the plus button, we can go to edit data type. Data Wrangler is intuitive in that it knows what the data type is for a field. So now we've got the data in front of us, let's have a bit of background on what the data is actually telling us. So this is bank data for customers' borrowing habits. So it tells us how much a customer has borrowed from the bank, and then it gives them information on their employment status, their living status, their spending habits, and then we're presented with the target variable of whether they are low risk or high risk for borrowing money. Before we dive into the transformation stage, let's carry out some analysis on our data. Select the plus button and click Add Analysis. On the right hand side, in the drop down, select Table Summary. Select Preview. This shows us a table of high level statistics. This is exactly the same as doing a .describe function in pandas. We can use this to instantly see if we have any missing data. We have a count of 1,000 across all our fields, so we don't have any missing data. Providing you're happy with the table, we can give it a name, select Preview again, and hit Save. We can refer back to this table at any time. Let's select Create New Analysis. Select Histogram, and let's have a look at how our target variable is distributed. So along our x-axis, let's select Risk and hit Preview. We can see that the majority of our customers are low risk, roughly 70%. Now let's have a look how the credit amount is distributed amongst the age bands. So on our x-axis, let's select credit amount, and let's colour by age. We can instantly see that up to 4K is the most commonly borrowed amount, and borrowing in general is definitely common between the 20, 30 and even 40-year-olds. Again, we can give this a name. We can hit Preview again, and then we can simply hit Save. Now we have another analysis to refer to. Once we have carried out some analysis of our data, we want to transform our data. Let's head back to our data flow, click the plus button, and add transform. We're going to go through each of these columns one by one and just see what transformation we can apply. Existing check-in. Now this is ordinal data, so you want to apply ordinal encoding. We can do this very easily. On the right hand side, we hit Encode Categorical, Ordinal Encoding. Our input column is going to be existing check-in, and then our output is going to be existing check-in. We may have to change the name, as we can't always overwrite a name that exists. So let's give it the name existing underscore check-in and hit Preview. We scroll to the end, we'll see our new data assignments. It's been assigned with an integer, and it's also kept its inherent order. We'll have a look. We've got an integer of 1 is none. No account, if we scroll across, no account is 0, and little spending is 2. So we're definitely keeping that inherent order. Providing you're happy with the transformation, just hit Add. We head back to the data flow. We can see our steps start to build up. So now we've got another step in the pipeline, which is our encoding. Let's select the plus button again and add another transform. Now we have already transformed our existing check-in, we don't really have any use for the old column, so we might as well just drop it. So let's go to Manage Columns, select Drop Column, Column to Drop, Existing Check-in, Preview. We'll see that that column disappears. Let's select Add. That's another step in our transformation. Now, let's have a look at duration. We don't really need to do anything with duration, as it's already been provided as an integer. Credit amount, we are definitely going to scale credit amount, but we'll come to that at the end of the tutorial. The next field to transform is saving. Now this field does also have an order to it. However, if we use the encode categorical function, it won't actually order it as well as we did in existing check-in. For this field, we need to use some custom pandas. We select custom transform, and we select pandas. It's worth noting at this point that pandas is good for development and using any data sets less than 2 gig. In production environments, we definitely want to scale this up, so we're going to have to use PySpark. For this video, we're going to be using pandas, and we're simply going to use this piece of code. Now what is this code doing? This code is just creating a dictionary with the string and the integer value you want to assign to that string. We just assign that dictionary to a variable, and then we just use the .map function to make that mapping. We hit preview. We can just simply overwrite that same field, and then now we have our assignment in the data set. Now we select add, and now we can see that we don't actually have to drop the old field because we've just simply overwritten it using our custom pandas. The next field we want to transform is employment since. This is exactly the same situation as savings. We actually want to apply our custom pandas. we go ahead and we use this piece of code. It's doing exactly the same thing as previous. We're using an integer assignment with a dictionary, assign it to a value, and then carry out the mapping. We hit preview, and then we hit add, and we overwrite our field with our new integer assignment. The next field we want to transform is the status sex field. Now notice this is going to be a little bit different to the other field. So we're going to actually have to split this one out into two fields. So we do this using the search and edit function. We can select search and edit. We want to select split string by delimiter. Our input column is going to be status sex, and our delimiter is going to be a colon. Our output, we're going to call it status sex, but then we're going to do an underscore vector. We write the vector part because the actual result of splitting this is going to be a vector. We select preview, we scroll to the end, and now we can see our new vector column. Let's hit add. Now we need to do something with the vector. What we want to do is flatten it. So we go to manage vectors, select flatten. Our input column will be status sex vector. Our output prefix will be status sex. Hit preview, and we notice we split that into two separate columns. Let's select add. Now we split our vector into two new columns. We don't actually need the vector column, so we can just go ahead and drop that. Go to manage columns, drop column, select the column, status sex vector, hit preview. Once you're happy, click add. Now we've got our two new columns, we want to rename them just so they're a bit more meaningful. Go to manage columns, you can rename column. Our input column is going to be status sex underscore 0. Let's just call this sex. Preview, add. Let's do exactly the same for status sex 1. And we'll call this relationship status. Hit preview and then hit add. Now our sex column is suitable to encode. With this field, there's no ordering in the column. It's a nominal variable. So we don't actually want to do ordinal encoding. We want to carry out something called one-hot encoding. If we go to encode categorical, we select one-hot encode. Our input column, which is sex, and then our output style is going to be columns. Rename our output column, call it sex, preview, and then add. Now we can see we've got two new columns. We've got one for male and one for female, and this just gives a binary value, either 1 or 0, as to whether it exists in the data for that line, for that record in that data. Now we can do exactly the same for relationship status. Encode categorical, one-hot encode, input column will be relationship status, columns, and then call it relationship status. Let's preview this and then go ahead and click add. With relationship status, in the titles you're going to have a few slashes. I think it's just best practice to rename them so they're just all underscores. So go to manage columns, go to rename column, input column, once you're happy with the naming convention, hit add. But you can do this for all the other columns that have a slash in. Now we have successfully one-hot encoded our sex column and our relationship column. Now we've one-hot encoded our sex status column, we actually have no use for the old column, so we can just go ahead and drop that. So go to Manage Columns, drop column, select our field, hit Preview, and we can just remove that. Then the next field we want to do is housing. Housing, again, doesn't really have any order, it's a nominal variable. Let's go ahead and one-hot encode it. As we can now see, we have a binary value for all of the different entries for our housing field. We also want to carry this method out for job as well. Similar to relationship status, the field headings will have some slashes in, so it's just good practice to remove these and change them to underscores. The last string field remaining that we need to encode is our risk field, i.e. our target variable. We don't actually want to one-hot encode this field though, we just want to ordinal code this. We go to encode categorical, ordinal code, select risk, output column as risk, and preview. We've actually got an error here because this output column does exist already, so let's call this target. Scroll along, we have our target variable, and then select add, and then let's go ahead and drop our risk field. And then select add. Now we have a binary value or an integer for our target variable. Now we have one more field in the data that we want to transform, and that's our credit amount. If we scroll along to credit amount, this number is just too high compared to some of the other values, so we want to scale it. Let's go to Process Numeric, Scale Values, and select Standard Scaler. There are other options to scale your data, but for now we'll just select Standard. Select our input column as credit amount, and then our output column as credit amount. Select Preview. And we can see that the number is now scaled down to fit the data set. Let's select add. And then just one more point before we finish up on the transformation stage. It's always good practice to move your target variable to the beginning of the data set, especially if you're going to be carrying out XGBoost classification. Let's go to Manage Columns and then Move Column. Select Move to Start, and then you want your target, and then hit Preview. Once you're happy, select Add. So now we have successfully transformed our data. Our data is in a suitable format for machine learning. So what do we do now? So let's head back to the data flow. There are some analysis types that we didn't cover earlier, so let's cover those now. Select the plus and add analysis. The first one will be the quick model. Select our quick model and select target, and then preview. The quick model uses a method called the Gini importance method to find a feature score or feature importance score for each feature. It shows us what features will have the biggest impact on our target variable. By producing this chart, we can see that duration, existing check-in, and credit amount are the three most important features in our dataset. You'll also notice that when you produce your quick model, it produces an F1 score. This F1 score shows you how accurate the model is. It's a useful metric, however it's not to be taken for gospel, as it's a harmonic average of the precision and the recall. When you actually go to further this into a classification model, for our use case, we want to actually achieve the highest possible recall, as we want to minimize those false negatives. The next chart we want to produce is target leakage. So we come to the right hand side, we select target leakage, our problem type, this is going to be classification, and then our target is our target variable. Click preview. Now what exactly is target leakage? Let's take the example that we have 100 new customers. Say we decide to carry out a regression model to predict the credit amount for those customers. And then we use that prediction to then decide whether they are high risk or low risk. This could lead to target leakage. You're essentially using predictive values to calculate data in the past. Once we produce the chart, we can see that most of our fields are quite safe. We aren't really at risk of any target leakage. However, if we scroll down a bit further, we can see that there are a few possibly redundant fields. This just means that these fields might not be so useful when we carry out our predictions. The best thing to do is when we come to carry out our predictions, we try it with the fields and then we try it without, and we see if it makes any difference to the accuracy or to our predictions. Once you're happy with your chart, you can save it and head back to the data flow. So where do we go from here? Well, we've transformed our data and we carried out some visualization. Well, now the data is suitable for machine learning. The next step is to export this data and then make it accessible for SageMaker. From then we can carry out our classification model to make predictions. We hit our plus button, go to add transform, and then we hit export data. There are multiple ways that we can export this data from data Wrangler. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to export it back into our S3 bucket. Select browse, select our bucket, and then hit export. Make sure that the data is in a CSV format. This will take a couple of minutes. Once the data has been exported, we can check this. We go to import, select Amazon S3, select our bucket, we will see our output CSV file. The one final thing I want to touch on before we finish the tutorial is closing down your instances. If you don't close down your kernel, it can rack up some serious cost. So we go to the toolbar at the top, select kernel, and then shut down all kernels. Hit shut down all, then go to file, and then select shut down, and shut down all. This closes everything that you have been using. If you close this window, go back to your SageMaker Studio control panel, you click on your user, you will see that your instance is being deleted. This is how you know that your SageMaker is being closed down. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're looking to enter the world of machine learning, but you don't quite know how to get started, get in touch with us and we can help you accelerate your data journey with Data Wrangler.